Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey through the corridors of time. Tonight we invite you to settle into comfort as we explore the world of Alexander the Great, not through the lens of dramatic conquest, but through the quiet rhythms of daily life in ancient Macedonia and the vast territories that would come to know his name. Close your eyes, if you wish, and let your breathing slow. You are safe here, in this moment, far removed from the dust and uncertainty of the ancient world. Tonight, we'll walk together through marble halls and tent-lined camps, through the ordinary moments that filled extraordinary lives over 2 millennia ago. Our story unfolds in 4 gentle chapters. First, we'll immerse ourselves in the daily texture of Macedonian life, feeling the weight of wool and bronze, tasting barley bread and watered wine. Then we'll follow the measured steps of Alexander's own journey from curious prince to world conqueror. We'll pause to explore the mysteries his armies uncovered: lost cities, forgotten gods, and the archaeological whispers they left behind. Finally, we'll contrast the lives of common soldiers with the gilded world of Persian nobles, seeing how conquest changed the rhythm of existence for all. Let the weight of your day settle away as we begin. Imagine yourself stepping through a doorway, made of time itself, into a world where the Mediterranean sun falls differently, where voices speak in tongues long silent, where the very air carries the scent of olive oil and incense, horses and leather, the eternal human story of ambition and its consequences. The year is 356 BCE. In the kingdom of Macedonia, nestled between the Greek city-states and the barbarian tribes of the north, life moves to rhythms as old as the mountains themselves. The biography of Alexander, from prince to world conqueror, the child of 2 worlds now. Dear listener, let us turn our attention to the man himself, not the marble statue or the golden legend, but the breathing, dreaming child who would grow to reshape the known world. Alexander was born into a world of contradictions, and perhaps this tension shaped everything that followed. His father, Philip II, was a man of the north, a Macedonian who understood that power came from the marriage of Greek culture and barbarian strength. Picture Philip, scarred from countless battles, blind in one eye from a siege arrow, his body a living map of the violence required to forge a kingdom. Yet this same man collected Greek philosophers, built theaters, and filled his court with the finest minds of his age. In Philip's hands, Macedonia became a bridge between the civilized south and the wild north, between the intellectual refinement of Athens and the raw military prowess of the tribes. Alexander's mother, Olympias, brought a different kind of power to this union. She was an Epirote princess, initiated into the mysterious cults of Dionysus and the Great Mother. Imagine her moving through the Macedonian court like a force of nature, beautiful, dangerous, devoted to gods who demanded ecstasy and sacrifice. She filled young Alexander's mind with stories of divine ancestry, whispering that his true father was not Philip, but Zeus himself, that godhood ran in his veins alongside mortal blood. The young prince grew up surrounded by these competing influences. In the morning, he might receive instruction in Greek poetry from a learned tutor, memorizing the rhythmic verses of Homer until they became part of his breathing. In the afternoon, he would practice swordplay with Macedonian warriors, learning that survival depended on the speed of his reactions and the strength of his arm. In the evening, he might watch his mother perform sacred rituals, seeing her transform from queen to priestess as she honored gods who lived outside the rational world of Greek philosophy. The education of a future conqueror. When Alexander reached his 13th year, Philip made a decision that would echo through history. He summoned Aristotle, the greatest philosopher of his age, to serve as the young prince's tutor. Picture the meeting between these 2 remarkable minds: the middle-aged philosopher, already famous for his systematic approach to knowledge, and the golden-haired boy whose eyes held an intensity that made grown men uncomfortable. Aristotle established his school in the gardens of Mysa, a place of such beauty that it seemed designed for contemplation. Ancient plane trees provided shade for outdoor lessons, their broad leaves whispering in the breeze. A clear stream ran through the grounds, its gentle murmur providing a constant backdrop to philosophical discussions. Here, away from the noise and intrigue of court, Alexander's mind was shaped by one of history's greatest thinkers. The lessons were not merely academic. Aristotle understood that he was training a future king, not a scholar. He taught Alexander to think systematically about governance, to understand the natural world as a series of interconnected systems, to see human society as something that could be studied and improved. But he also encouraged the young prince's natural curiosity, his desire to explore the unknown, to push beyond the boundaries of the familiar world. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander developed what would become his most dangerous quality, the ability to learn from everything and everyone. He studied military tactics with the same intensity he brought to philosophy. He learned to speak multiple languages, understanding that communication was the first tool of conquest. He memorized vast passages of poetry, knowing that words could move men's hearts as surely as swords could break their bodies. The relationship between teacher and student was complex, marked by mutual respect and growing tension. Aristotle valued order, classification, the careful building of knowledge through observation and logic. Alexander was drawn to the heroic, the impossible, the dramatic gesture that could change the world in a single moment. Their debates, conducted in the peaceful gardens of Mysa, foreshadowed the philosophical tensions that would define Alexander's later conquests. The taming of Bucephalus. When Alexander was still a boy, an incident occurred that would become legendary, though its true significance lay not in its drama, but in what it revealed about the young prince's character. A horse dealer from Thessaly brought a magnificent stallion to Philip, escort a black beast of extraordinary size and beauty, but so wild that no one could mount him. The horse's name was Bucephalus, and he was truly magnificent. His coat was black as midnight, his mane flowing like liquid shadow. When he reared, his hooves struck the air with the sound of thunder. When he screamed his challenge, the sound echoed from the palace walls like a battle cry. He was everything a warhorse should be: powerful, proud, indomitable. Philip and his men watched as trainer after trainer attempted to break the horse. Each attempt ended the same way: the man thrown to the ground, the horse wheeling away with eyes rolling white, nostrils flaring red. The price the dealer asked was enormous: 13 talents. Enough to buy a small farm, but the horse seemed impossible to tame. It was then that young Alexander stepped forward. He had been watching silently, but his eyes held the focused intensity that those who knew him had learned to recognize. He approached the horse slowly, speaking in a voice so quiet that the watching men had to strain to hear. But it was not his voice that mattered. It was what he had observed that the others had missed. Alexander had noticed that the horse was afraid of his own shadow. Each time Bucephalus reared, he caught sight of the dark shape moving beneath him, and his fear turned to panic. The solution was simple. Alexander turned the horse toward the sun, so that his shadow fell behind him where he could not see it. Then, still speaking in that same quiet voice, he vaulted onto the horse's back. The moment stretched like a held breath. Horse and rider seemed frozen in time, the black stallion trembling with barely contained power, the golden-haired boy sitting easily in the saddle. Then Bucephalus took his first step forward, and the watching men released their breath in a collective sigh. The horse had found his master, and the master had found his perfect companion. Philip is said to have wept with pride, declaring that Macedonia was too small to contain such a son. But perhaps what moved him most was not the boy's courage. Courage was common enough in the Macedonian court, but his intelligence. Alexander had succeeded where grown men had failed, not through force, but through observation, not through dominance, but through understanding. These were the qualities that would later allow him to conquer not just territories, but the hearts of the people he defeated. The regent's wisdom at 16, Alexander was appointed regent, while Philip campaigned in the south. This was no ceremonial position. At 16, Alexander held the full authority of kingship over Macedonia. The weight of responsibility settled on his young shoulders like a cloak of lead, but he bore it with the grace that would characterize his entire life. His first test came quickly. The Thracian tribe of the Mede, sensing weakness in the young regent, launched raids across the Macedonian border. Lesser men might have sent messengers to Philip, seeking guidance or reinforcement. Alexander gathered his forces and marched north. The campaign was brief but decisive. Alexander did not merely defeat the Mede, he transplanted them, moving the entire tribe to a new settlement that he named Alexandropolis. This was not random cruelty, but calculated policy. By relocating the tribe, he prevented future raids while demonstrating Macedonia's strength. By naming the settlement after himself, he announced to the world that Alexander was a force to be reckoned with. The young regent's actions revealed a mind that thought several moves ahead. He understood that true victory required not just military success, but the creation of lasting solutions. This ability to see beyond the immediate battle to the larger strategic picture would serve him well in the campaigns to come. The heir's burden. Philip's assassination in 336 BC transformed Alexander from prince to king in a single bloody moment. The scene unfolded in the theater at Aegia during the celebration of his daughter's wedding. Philip entered the theater alone, as tradition demanded, wearing a white robe that marked him as suppliant to the gods. The assassin, Pausanias, struck him down with a single thrust of his dagger, then fled toward the horses waiting outside. Alexander was 20 years old when he became king, and the weight of the crown nearly crushed him. The kingdom Philip had built through decades of careful diplomacy and strategic warfare seemed ready to collapse. Greek cities rebelled, sensing opportunity in the young king's inexperience. Northern tribes raided the borders, testing Macedonian resolve. Even within the court, there were whispers of instability, questions about whether this untested boy could hold together his father's achievements. But Alexander had learned well from both his parents. From Philip, he had inherited the ability to think strategically, to understand that kingship was a performance that required constant vigilance. From Olympias, he had absorbed the knowledge that power flowed from divine sources, that a king must be more than merely human to command absolute loyalty. His first actions as king were swift and decisive. He moved south with an army, not to wage war, but to demonstrate strength. City after city submitted without resistance, recognizing that this young king possessed the same dangerous competence that had made his father master of Greece. The speed of his movement, the precision of his diplomacy, the careful balance of mercy and threat all announced that Macedonia remained a power to be feared. The destruction of Thebes, the true test of Alexander's reign, came in 335 BCE, when Thebes declared its independence from Macedonian rule. The city's rebellion was more than political. It was a challenge to the very foundation of Macedonian power. In Greece, if Thebes could successfully defy Alexander, every other city would follow, and the empire Philip had built would crumble. Alexander's response was swift and terrible. He marched south with overwhelming force, surrounding the city with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. The siege that followed was brief but comprehensive. Theban resistance collapsed not through starvation or exhaustion, but through the simple recognition that defeat was inevitable. What followed was one of the most controversial acts of Alexander's career. He ordered the city's complete destruction, not just the walls and fortifications, but the houses, temples, and public buildings. The population was sold into slavery, scattered to the winds of history. In a single day, one of Greece's greatest cities ceased to exist. The destruction of Thebes was not random brutality, but calculated terror. Alexander understood that examples must be made, that the price of rebellion must be so high that no other city would dare to pay it. The smoke rising from Theban ruins carried a message across the Greek world. This young king was not his father's pale shadow, but a force of nature that would tolerate no challenge to his authority. Yet even in destruction, Alexander showed the complexity that would define his reign. He spared the house of Pindar, the great poet, ordering his soldiers to leave it untouched among the ruins. He granted safe passage to any descendants of those who had fought alongside Macedonia in previous wars. These gestures of mercy, small against the backdrop of the city's destruction, revealed a mind that understood both the necessity of terror and the importance of maintaining honor. The crossing of the Hellespont. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia with an army of 35,000 men. This was the moment his true destiny began, the point where the young king of Macedonia transformed into the conqueror of the known world. But the crossing itself was carefully orchestrated theater, designed to announce his intentions not just to his enemies, but to the gods themselves. Alexander was the first to leap from the ships onto the Asian shore. He wore full armor, his shield gleaming in the morning sun, his spear point sharp and bright. This was not mere symbolism, but a declaration of war against the Persian Empire, a challenge thrown down before the greatest power on earth. The young king who had destroyed Thebes now stood ready to topple the throne of Darius himself. The army that followed him was a masterpiece of military engineering. The Macedonian phalanx formed its backbone, men trained from childhood to fight as a single organism, their long spears creating an impenetrable wall of bronze and death. The Salian cavalry provided mobility and shock power, their horsemanship legendary throughout the Greek world. Allied troops from across the Hellenic world added numbers and variety, each contingent contributing its own specialized skills. But this was more than a military expedition. It was a cultural crusade. Alexander carried with him Greek artists, and philosophers, engineers, and historians. He intended not just to conquer Asia, but to transform it, to create a new world where Greek culture would flourish in alien soil. The young king who had sat at Aristotle's feet now prepared to become the teacher of nations, not the pattern of conquest Alexander's. Campaigns in Asia followed a pattern that would become familiar across the known world. He would advance with terrifying speed, striking before his enemies could coordinate their defenses. His battles were masterpieces of tactical brilliance, each one demonstrating his ability to read the battlefield and exploit his opponent's weaknesses. At the Granicus River, he shattered the first Persian army sent against him. The battle was brief, but decisive, with Alexander himself leading the crucial cavalry charge that broke the enemy line. Persian nobles died by the hundreds, their bodies floating in the river that gave the battle its name. But Alexander's victory was complete, not just military, but psychological. The Persian Empire, which had seemed invincible, had been defeated by a Macedonian boy barely out of his teens. The siege of Halicarnassus revealed another aspect of Alexander's genius. Faced with a city protected by massive walls and defended by Greek mercenaries, he could have starved the defenders into submission. Instead, he chose to demonstrate Macedonian engineering prowess, building siege towers and catapults that reduced the walls to rubble. The message was clear. No fortification could protect those who opposed him. At Issus, he faced Darius III himself, the great king of Persia. The battle was fought on ground that favored the Persians, with their superior numbers and skilled archers. But Alexander's tactical genius turned disadvantage into victory. He identified the crucial moment when the Persian line wavered, then led a cavalry charge directly at Darius himself. The sight of the Macedonian king, his armor stained with blood, his sword raised high, charging toward the golden chariot of the great king, broke the Persian army's morale. Darius fled, leaving behind his mother, wife, and children. The siege of Tyre. The siege of Tyre in 332 BCE represented perhaps Alexander's greatest military achievement. The city stood on an island half a mile from the shore, protected by walls that rose directly from the sea. Its fleet controlled the waters around it, making conventional siege warfare impossible. Lesser commanders would have bypassed the city, accepting that some strongholds were simply impregnable. Alexander chose a different path. He ordered the construction of a causeway, bridge of stone and earth that would connect the island to the mainland. The project seemed impossible, but Alexander's engineers possessed both skill and determination. They drove wooden piles into the seabed, then filled the spaces between with rubble and earth. Slowly and possibly, the causeway grew toward the city. Tyrians fought back with desperate ingenuity. They sent fire ships against the causeway, burning the wooden framework and forcing the Macedonians to begin again. They attacked the workers with arrows and catapults, making every day's labor battle for survival. But Alexander's will proved stronger than their desperation. The causeway continued to grow, and with it, the certainty of the city's doom. When the walls finally fell, the slaughter was terrible. The Tyrians had fought with the courage of the doomed, and Alexander's soldiers responded with the fury of men who had been frustrated too long. The city's fall sent shockwaves throughout the ancient world. If Tyre could be taken, no city was safe from Macedonian ambition. The desert god Alexander's journey to the oracle of Ammon at Siwa Oasis revealed another dimension of his character. After conquering Egypt, he could have consolidated his gains, organized his new territories, prepared for the next phase of his campaign. Instead, he chose to march into the Libyan desert, seeking answers to questions that tormented his soul. Journey was perilous. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, its silence broken only by the whisper of wind-blown sand. Water was scarce, carefully rationed among the men. The sun burned by day, the cold bit by night. This was a landscape that reduced human ambition to its most basic elements, the need for water, shelter, survival. But Alexander pressed on, driven by a compulsion that his men could not understand. He needed to know whether he was truly the son of Zeus, whether his divine parentage was more than his mother's wishful thinking. At Siwa, the oracle's priest greeted him as the son of Ammon, confirming what Olympias had whispered in his childhood. Alexander emerged from the temple transformed, carrying with him the certainty that he was more than mortal. The desert pilgrimage revealed the spiritual dimension of Alexander's conquests. He was not merely a general seeking territory, but a seeker pursuing divine truth. This conviction would sustain him through the trials ahead, but it would also distance him from his men, who saw in their king a growing strangeness that made them uncomfortable. The final battle at Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander faced Darius for the last time. The Persian king had assembled the largest army in history, a vast host drawn from every corner of his empire. Scythed chariots gleamed in the morning sun, their wheels fitted with razor-sharp blades. War elephants trumpeted their challenges, their riders skilled in the art of mounted warfare. The flower of Persian nobility rode in golden armor, there, weapons blessed by the priests of Ahura Mazda. Alexander's army was smaller, but infinitely more cohesive. His men had marched with him for years, sharing victories and hardships, bound together by loyalty and shared purpose. They knew their king, trusted his judgment, followed his orders with the precision of a well-tuned instrument. This was this army that had conquered half the known world, and they prepared for battle with the confidence of veterans. The battle itself was a masterpiece of tactical brilliance. Alexander identified the crucial moment when the Persian line began to waver, then led his companions in a cavalry charge that split the enemy formation. The sight of the Macedonian king, his armor gleaming with divine light, his sword raised high, charging directly at the great king's position, broke the Persian army's will to fight. Darius fled again, this time abandoning his empire to the young conqueror. The weight of victory at Gaugamela made Alexander master of the Persian Empire, but it also marked the beginning of his transformation from Greek king to Asian despot. The customs of the Persian court, designed to emphasize the divine nature of kingship, began to influence his behavior. He adopted Persian dress, required prostration from his subjects, married Asian wives. These changes disturbed his Macedonian companions, who saw in their king a growing distance from the values that had made him great. The tension between Alexander's Greek heritage and his Asian ambitions would define the remainder of his reign. He was caught between two worlds, trying to forge a new kind of empire that would unite East and West under his rule. The attempt would cost him the loyalty of some of his oldest friends, but it would also create a legacy that would endure for centuries. As Alexander stood in the ruins of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, he had achieved what no Greek had ever dreamed possible. He was master of the known world, ruler of territories that stretched from the Mediterranean to the mountains of Afghanistan. But greatness had come at a price. The young king who had crossed the Hellespont with such optimism was becoming something harder, more distant, more divine and less human. The pattern of his conquests would continue the relentless advance, the brilliant battles, the cultural transformation of conquered territories. But the cost would continue to mount, paid in the blood of his enemies and the loyalty of his friends. Alexander had become what he had always been destined to be, the greatest conqueror in history, but also the loneliest man on earth. Daily. Life immersion. The world of ancient Macedonia. The morning rhythm. Picture yourself waking in a Macedonian household as the first pale light filters through wooden shutters. The air is crisp with mountain coolness, carrying the scent of pine and the distant sound of sheep bells echoing from hillside pastures. Your sleeping couch, stuffed with wool and covered in rough-woven blankets, has kept you warm through the night, though you can feel the stone floors chill against your bare feet as you rise. The household is already stirring. You can hear the soft shuffle of sandaled feet, the gentle clatter of ceramic vessels, and the low murmur of morning prayers offered to the household gods. A servant girl passes by your doorway, her arms full of kindling, her breath visible in tela. Small puffs as she moves toward the central hearth. The rhythm of daily life in Macedonia begins before dawn, driven by the practical needs of survival, and the endless cycle of seasonal labor. Hot water for washing comes from a bronze basin, filled from the household's central well. The water is cold, shocking against your skin, but it carries the clean taste of mountain springs. You cup it in your hands, feeling its weight, its essential nature. This is water that has traveled from highland snows through limestone caves, emerging pure and vital. As you splash it on your face, you're participating in a ritual as old as human civilization, the daily renewal, the washing away of sleep and dreams. The texture of clothing and status. Your clothing tells the story of your place in this world. If you are a farmer or craftsman, your chiton is made of undyed wool, rough against your skin, but warm and practical. The fabric carries the familiar scent of the sheep it came from, mixed with the earthy smell of the fuller's clay used in its preparation. Your cloak, essential for the changeable mountain weather, is fastened with a simple bronze pin that your grandfather might have worn, but imagine, instead, that you belong to the nobility. Your chiton is made of fine linen, perhaps even silk traded from distant lands. The fabric falls differently against your skin, smooth and cool, dyed in rich purples or deep blues that speak of expense and refinement. Your cloak is edged with gold thread, and the pin that holds it is carved with intricate designs, perhaps a lion, symbol of royal power, or a vine heavy with grapes, representing the abundance that your status provides. The process of dressing is itself a meditation on social order. Each layer of clothing, each ornament, each choice of color reinforces your place in the hierarchy. Slaves dress their masters and mistresses, their own garments, simple and functional. The wealthy recline while others lace their sandals, oil their hair, and arrange their jewelry. This daily ritual of preparation is more than vanity. It's the physical manifestation of power, the way society organizes itself through the simple act of putting on clothes, the rhythm of work and sustenance. Morning meal is simple but nourishing. Barley bread, still warm from the oven, breaks apart in your hands with a satisfying crust. The interior is dense and chewy, requiring careful chewing, slowing down the act of eating into a mindful process. You dip it in olive oil, golden, fragrant, carrying the essence of ancient trees and summer sunshine. The oil coats your tongue with richness, a reminder of the Mediterranean's generous bounty. Cheese, made from goat's milk, adds sharp flavor to your breakfast. It's been aged in cool caves, developing a complex taste that speaks of time and patience. You eat it with your fingers, feeling its crumbly texture, tasting the herbs the goats grazed on in mountain meadows. A cup of wine, diluted with water according to custom, completes the meal. The wine is young and slightly rough, but it carries the essence of the vineyard earth and sunshine, transformed into liquid comfort. As you eat, you can hear the sounds of the household coming to life around you. The steady thunk of an axe splitting, wood for the day's fires, the rhythmic scrape of a broom on stone floors, the soft lowing of cattle being led to pasture. These sounds create a symphony of human industry, the daily effort required to sustain life in this ancient world. The marketplace and social fabric later in the morning. You might venture into the town's agora, the marketplace, that serves as the beating heart of Macedonian social life. Here, the air is thick with a mixture of scents: fresh bread from the baker's stalls, the metallic tang of bronze and iron from the smith's workshops, the earthy smell of pottery fresh from the kiln, and the more complex aromas of spices and perfumes from traders who have traveled impossible distances. The marketplace is a tapestry of human voices. Merchants call out their wares in rhythmic chants that have been passed down through generations. Fresh fish from the Aegean, olive oil from the sacred groves, pottery beautiful as the gods themselves. Their voices rise and fall in patterns, as familiar as birdsong, creating a constant background murmur that defines the space. You watch the careful dance of commerce. A housewife examines figs with the practiced eye of someone who knows exactly what ripeness looks like, feels like, smells like. She turns each fruit in her hands, pressing gently to test its firmness, bringing it close to her nose to catch its honeyed fragrance. The merchant watches her examination with patient understanding. This is not mere transaction, but a ritual of mutual respect. Buyer and seller joined in the ancient dance of trade. The potter's stall displays vessels that are both functional and beautiful. Large amphorae for storing oil and wine, their surfaces decorated with geometric patterns that please the eye while serving. No practical purpose beyond the human need for beauty. Smaller vessels for household use: cups, bowls, water jugs, each shaped by hands that understand the relationship between form and function. You run your fingers over the smooth surface of a cup, feeling the slight ridge where the potter's thumb shaped the rim, the almost imperceptible variations that mark it as the work of human hands rather than divine perfection. The weight of authority in the distance. You might catch sight of a royal procession. The sound reaches you first, the steady clip of horses' hooves on stone, the rhythmic jingle of bronze armor, the creaking of leather harnesses. Then you see them, the royal guard in their polished bronze breastplates, their red cloaks flowing behind them like liquid fire. Their horses are magnificent beasts, bred for war and parade, their coats gleaming with careful grooming, their movements controlled and purposeful. The crowd in the marketplace grows quiet as the procession passes. This is not fear, exactly, but a deep awareness of hierarchy. of the distance between ruler and ruled. Children press closer to their parents. Merchants pause in their calling. Even the animals seem to sense the change in atmosphere. Dogs lower their heads. Horses shift nervously in their traces. You might glimpse King Philip II himself, Alexander's father, a man whose presence fills the space around him like a stone thrown into still water. His bearing speaks of absolute authority, but also of the weight that authority carries. His eyes scan the crowd with the practiced awareness of a man who knows that kingship is a performance that must be maintained every moment, in every gesture, in every breath. The rhythm of training and education. If you are a young person of noble birth, your days are structured around the ancient Greek ideal of education, the cultivation of both mind and body. The morning might begin with physical training in the gymnasium, where young men learn the arts of war and athletics under the watchful eyes of experienced trainers. The gymnasium is a place of controlled violence, where the clash of wooden swords and the thud of bronze shields create a rhythm as regular as a heartbeat. Sweat mingles with the scent of olive oil used to anoint the athletes' bodies. The floor is covered with sand that grows dark with perspiration, and the occasional drop of blood from a training accident. This is where young Alexander himself learned to move with the fluid grace of a natural warrior, where his body was shaped into an instrument of conquest. But education extends beyond the physical. In the afternoon, you might sit in the shade of a colonnade, listening to a philosopher discourse on ethics or mathematics. The teacher's voice is measured and thoughtful, inviting contemplation rather than excitement. He speaks of virtue and justice, of the proper ordering of society, of the relationship between individual desire and collective good. His words fall into the warm air like drops of honey, sweet and substantial, requiring slow digestion. The writing lessons are a meditation on patience and precision. You hold a stylus, a thin rod of bronze or bone, and carefully scratch letters into a wax tablet. Each stroke must be deliberate, each letter formed with care. There is no hurry in this process, no pressure to complete quickly. The act of writing is itself a form of thinking, a way of making thoughts visible and permanent. The soft scrape of stylus on wax becomes a rhythm that focuses the mind, shutting out distractions and creating a space for concentration. The sacred rhythms religious observance weaves through daily life, like a golden thread through dark fabric. The household gods receive their daily offerings, a bit of bread, a splash of wine, a pinch of incense. These small rituals punctuate the day, moments of pause and reflection that acknowledge the divine presence in ordinary life. The family shrine is a simple affair, a small niche in the wall where clay figures of the gods preside over the household's welfare. Here stands Zeus, king of the gods, his miniature thunderbolt raised in eternal threat. Here is Hera, protector of marriage and family, her painted robes faded with age, but her authority undiminished. And here, perhaps most importantly, are the ancestors, the family's own dead, transformed by death into protective spirits who watch over their descendants. The rituals are simple but profound. A drop of wine poured on the ground before drinking. A small piece of bread left on the shrine before eating. A whispered prayer before beginning any important task. These actions require no great effort, demand no dramatic gesture, but they create a rhythm of acknowledgement, a constant awareness that human life exists within a larger cosmic order. The quiet hours, as the day moves toward evening, the pace of life slows. The afternoon heat encourages rest, reflection, the quiet activities that fill the hours between the morning's labor and the evening's social time. Women gather in the courtyard to spin wool, their fingers working with practiced efficiency, while their voices rise and fall in conversation. The rhythm of the spinning wheel creates a hypnotic backdrop, while the soft carding of wool produces a whisper-quiet scraping sound that speaks of patience and skill. The spinning is not merely practical, but social. Stories are shared, gossip exchanged, wisdom passed from older women to younger. The work of their hands continues uninterrupted, while their minds range freely over the concerns of family and community. This is women's time, women's space, where the real business of social connection unfolds away from the formal structures of male authority. In the men's quarters, the atmosphere is different, but equally restful. Here, older men might play games. With carved ivory pieces, their moves deliberate and thoughtful. The click of game pieces against the board creates a soft, irregular rhythm. Conversation flows around politics and philosophy, trade and war, but always with the measured pace of those who have learned that wisdom comes not from quick answers, but from careful consideration. The gathering darkness as evening approaches. The household prepares for the night's rest. Olive oil lamps are lit, their small flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The light is warm and golden, far different from the harsh brightness of modern illumination. It creates pools of visibility surrounded by gentle darkness, encouraging intimate conversation and quiet reflection. The evening meal is more elaborate than the morning's simple fare. If you are fortunate, there might be meat lamb roasted over an open fire, its skin crackling and fragrant with herbs. The process of cooking is itself a meditation, requiring patience and attention. The meat must be turned regularly, basted with oil and wine, watched carefully to prevent burning. The cook's movements are ritualistic, passed down through generations of similar meals, similar gatherings. The bread for the evening meal is different too, softer, made with fine flour, perhaps sweetened with honey. It tears apart differently in your hands, more yielding, more luxurious. The wine is stronger, less diluted, appropriate for the day's ending, and the relaxation that darkness brings. As you eat, you listen to the sounds of the household settling. Children's voices grow quieter, then disappear entirely as they are led to bed. The sounds of work cease one by one, the last hammer blow from the blacksmith's forge, the final splash of water as the day's vessels are cleaned, the soft closing of doors as the household prepares for rest. The night air carries different. Sense the smoke from dying fires, the cool dampness that rises from the earth, the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers. You can hear the distant sound of night birds, the soft lowing of cattle settling in their pens, the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. This is the world that shaped Alexander, a world of rhythm and ritual, of careful hierarchy and measured time. It is a world where authority is visible and personal, where the distance between ruler and ruled is maintained through daily ceremony and constant awareness. It is a world where violence is always present, but carefully controlled, where the arts of war are learned alongside the arts of peace, where every young man of noble birth understands that his life may be required in service to his king and his people. As you prepare for sleep in this ancient world, you carry with you the accumulated weight of the day, the textures you have touched, the flavors you have tasted, the sounds you have heard. Your body is tired from honest labor, your mind satisfied with the day's learning, your spirit at peace with the rhythms of a life lived in harmony with the seasons and the gods. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own opportunities, its own small pleasures and necessary labors. But tonight, in this moment between waking and sleeping, you are part of an ancient story, a participant in the daily miracle of human civilization maintaining itself through the simple actions of ordinary people living extraordinary lives. World of Alexander the Great was built on these foundations, the daily choices of countless individuals, the accumulated wisdom of generations, the quiet strength of people who understood their place in the cosmic order and fulfilled their roles with dignity and grace. In this world of measured time and sacred rhythms, greatness was not an accident, but the inevitable result of a society that valued excellence, honored courage, and understood that true power comes not from domination, but from the ability to inspire others to achieve their highest potential. Asterisk the lost cities in the sand. Imagine, if you will, walking through the ruins of Alexandria Estate, the furthest Alexandria, one of the many cities Alexander founded at the very edges of the known world. The wind carries the scent of dust and time, whistling through broken stones that once formed the walls of homes, temples, and markets. Here, in what is now Tajikistan, archaeologists have uncovered the remnants of a dream made manifest, the vision of a young king who believed he could plant Greek civilization in the most remote corners of the earth. The excavations reveal layers of cultural fusion that speak to the complexity of Alexander's legacy. Greek pottery shards lie alongside Persian coins, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of handling. Buddhist sculptures rest in the same archaeological strata as Hellenic marble fragments, testament to the unexpected convergences that occurred when East met West under Macedonian rule. Each artifact tells a story of adaptation, of people learning to live together across vast cultural divides. In the foundations of these frontier cities, archaeologists have found something remarkable: standardized weights and measures bearing Alexander's seal, evidence of his attempt to create economic unity across his vast empire. The bronze standards, green with age, still bear the precise markings that allowed a merchant in Bactria to trade with a banker in Alexandria. This was not mere conquest, but the systematic creation of a new kind of world. One, or distance, could be measured in common units, and value could be understood in universal terms. The mystery deepens when we consider the speed with which these cities were established. Alexander's engineers possessed knowledge that seems almost magical in its efficiency. They could survey new territory, plan urban layouts, and begin construction with a precision that modern archaeologists struggle to understand. Their tools were simple bronze instruments, wooden measuring rods, hemp rope, yet they created cities that functioned for centuries, their water systems still flowing, their street grids still visible beneath the accumulated debris of ages. The vanished Library of Alexandria. Perhaps no mystery associated with Alexander's legacy haunts the imagination more than the great Library of Alexandria, founded in the city that bore his name. Though Alexander himself died before its completion, the library represented the fullest expression of his vision, a place where all human knowledge would be gathered, preserved, and made accessible to scholars from every corner of the known world. Picture the library as it might have appeared in its glory days: vast halls filled with papyrus scrolls, their surfaces covered with the accumulated wisdom of millennia. The scent of cedar oil, used to preserve the papyrus, mingles with the dust of scholarship and the faint perfume of the scribe's ink. Scholars from Athens debate with philosophers from Babylon, their voices echoing softly in the cathedral-like spaces devoted to learning. The library's collection methods reveal the systematic ambition that characterized Alexander's approach to empire building. Every ship that entered Alexandria's harbor was searched, and any books found were confiscated for copying. The originals were kept. The copies were returned to the owners. This was cultural imperialism of the most sophisticated kind, the recognition that knowledge, not gold, was the true treasure worth conquering. Archaeological evidence suggests that the library contained not just Greek and Egyptian texts, but works from India, Persia, and the distant reaches of Asia. Fragments of mathematical treatises written in Sanskrit have been found alongside Greek astronomical texts, evidence of the kind of cross-cultural fertilization that occurred when Alexander's conquests brought distant civilizations into contact with each other. The library's destruction remains one of history's great mysteries. Was it burned by Christian zealots? Destroyed by Arab conquerors? Or did it simply decay slowly, its treasures scattered to the winds as political support waned? Recent archaeological work in Alexandria has uncovered tantalizing clues, charred papyrus fragments, scattered architectural elements, evidence of systematic destruction that occurred over decades rather than in a single catastrophic event. Makes the library's loss particularly poignant is what we know it contained. Ancient catalogs speak of works that would revolutionize our understanding of the ancient world. Complete plays by Sophocles, lost histories of Alexander's campaigns, scientific treatises that anticipated discoveries not made again until the Renaissance. The silence of these vanished voices creates a hollow space in our understanding of the past, a reminder that conquest and creation are inevitably followed by loss and forgetting. The archaeology of fusion in the ruins of Khanum, a Greek city. In Afghanistan, archaeologists have uncovered one of the most remarkable examples of cultural synthesis in the ancient world. The city was founded by Alexander's successors, but its remains reveal a civilization that was neither purely Greek nor purely Asian, but something entirely new, a hybrid culture that combined elements from both traditions in ways that neither could have achieved alone. The gymnasium at Khanum follows traditional Greek architectural principles, but its decorative elements show clear Persian influence. Stone columns carved with acanthus leaves stand beside wall panels depicting scenes from Indian epic poetry. The city's theater, built according to Greek specifications, contained mask fragments that show both Greek and Asian facial characteristics, suggesting that the actors performed works that drew from multiple dramatic traditions. Perhaps most intriguingly, the city's philosophical school produced texts that attempt to reconcile Greek rationalism with Buddhist metaphysics. Stone tablets bearing inscriptions in both Greek and Sanskrit suggest that scholars in this remote outpost were engaged in the kind of intellectual synthesis that would not be seen again until the Islamic Golden Age. They were trying to create a new way of understanding the world, one that would incorporate insights from all the traditions that Alexander's conquests had brought together. The archaeological evidence suggests that this fusion was not imposed from above, but grew organically from the daily interactions of people from different cultures. Greek merchants learned to use Indian numbering systems. Persian administrators adopted Greek record-keeping methods. Buddhist monks incorporated Greek geometric principles into their temple architecture. The result was a civilization that was genuinely cosmopolitan, one that prefigured the global interconnectedness that we take for granted today. The mystery of the royal tombs. The search for Alexander's tomb has captivated archaeologists for centuries. But the mystery extends far beyond the question of where the great conqueror's body lies. Recent excavations at Vergina, the ancient capital of Macedonia, have revealed a complex of royal tombs that shed new light on the culture that produced Alexander and the rituals that surrounded Macedonian kingship. The tomb identified as belonging to Philip II contains treasures that speak to the sophisticated material culture of the Macedonian court. A golden wreath of oak leaves, so finely crafted that individual veins are visible on each leaf, rested on the king's skull. The craftsmanship required to create such a delicate object from solid gold suggests the presence of artisans whose skills rivaled those of any civilization in the ancient world. But it is the armor found in the tomb that truly illuminates the warrior culture that shaped Alexander. The bronze cuirass, decorated with scenes of battle and victory, was not merely protective gear, but a statement of identity. Each element of the decoration tells us storylines representing royal power, gods offering divine protection, fallen enemies acknowledging Macedonian supremacy. To wear such armor was to become a walking embodiment of political and religious authority. The tomb's wall paintings provide even more intimate insights into Macedonian beliefs about death and kingship. One scene shows Philip being welcomed into the afterlife by the gods, his mortal form transformed into something divine. Another depicts the royal hunt, that most aristocratic of activities, continuing in the realm of the dead. These images suggest a culture that saw death not as an ending, but as a transformation, a passage from earthly to divine authority. The mystery deepens when we consider the tomb's undisturbed state. Unlike most ancient royal burials, which were robbed in antiquity, Philip's tomb remained sealed for over 2 millennia. This suggests that its location was deliberately concealed, perhaps by Alexander himself, who would have understood the importance of preserving his father's resting place from the chaos that followed his own death. The riddle of the Gordian knot. The story of the Gordian knot has become one of the most enduring legends associated with Alexander's name, but recent archaeological work at Gordium has revealed details that complicate our understanding of this famous episode. The knot itself was not merely a rope puzzle, but a complex religious artifact, bound up with ancient Phrygian beliefs about kinship and divine authority. Excavations at the site have uncovered evidence that the knot was housed in a temple dedicated to Cybele, the great mother goddess of Anatolia. The temple's architecture reveals a sophisticated understanding of acoustic engineering. The chamber where the knot was displayed was designed to amplify sound, suggesting that the cutting of the knot was accompanied by ritual music or chanting. That would have created a powerful sensory experience for witnesses. The knot itself appears to have been made from the hide of a sacred bull, treated with preservatives that kept it supple for centuries. Chemical analysis of fragments found at the site reveals the presence of myrrh and other expensive aromatics, suggesting that the knot was not only a political symbol, but a religious relic that was tended with the same care afforded to the most sacred objects. What makes Alexander's solution to the knot particularly intriguing is its apparent violation of religious protocol. According to local tradition, the knot was supposed to be untied, not cut. By drawing his sword and severing the knot, Alexander was making a statement about the relationship between Greek rationalism and Asian mysticism. He was declaring that problems had solutions, that divine mysteries could be resolved through human action. The archaeological evidence suggests that Alexander's gesture had lasting cultural impact. Subsequent rulers in the region adopted the sword as a symbol of authority, and temple decorations from later periods show rulers holding drawn swords in context that clearly reference the Gordian knot episode. Alexander's pragmatic solution to a religious puzzle became a model for how Greek culture could dominate Asian traditions through the application of rational analysis. The contrast of lives, common soldiers and Persian elites, the weight of bronze and leather. Picture yourself as a common soldier in Alexander's army, waking before dawn in a tent that barely protects you from the cold mountain air of Bactria. Your body aches from yesterday's march 20 miles over rocky terrain, carrying 60 pounds of equipment that has become as familiar as your own limbs. The bronze of your armor has grown warm against your skin through the night, but now it feels cold and heavy, a reminder of the burden you carry as one of history's most effective killing machines. Your companions stir around you, men whose faces have become more familiar than those of your own family. There is Cleitos from the highlands, whose beard is prematurely gray from the dust of a dozen campaigns. Beside him lies Nicomedes, barely 18, still bearing the soft features of youth, despite the hardening effects of constant warfare. There, breathing creates small clouds in the cold air, and you can smell the familiar mixture of unwashed bodies, leather, and the metallic tang of weapons that never quite lose the scent of blood. The routine of preparation begins without words. Each man knows his part in the ancient dance of military readiness. You check your spear 18 feet of cornel wood, topped with a bronze point that has been honed to razor sharpness. The shaft is smooth from handling, worn by the grip of countless hands during drill and battle. This weapon has become an extension of your body, its weight perfectly balanced, its reach calculated to work in perfect harmony with your shield and those of your companions. Your shield, the hoplon that gives the phalanx its name, bears the scratches and dents of previous engagements. Each mark tells a story. The deep gouge from a Persian sword that came too close at Gaugamela. A bronze boss dented by an Indian arrow that might have found your heart. The leather grip has molded itself to your hand, while the bronze rim has worn smooth where it rests against your forearm during long marches. The democracy of suffering. In the ranks of the phalanx, social distinctions matter less than they do in civilian life. The son of a Macedonian farmer stands beside the descendant of minor nobility, both reduced to the same fundamental reality. Survival depends on the man next to you. Your life is measured not in acres owned or talents earned, but in the reliability of your shield arm and the steadiness of your spear point dot. The food you eat is simple but sufficient. Barley meal mixed with water and oil, formed into cakes that can be eaten on the march. The taste is bland but familiar, the texture requiring careful chewing that has strengthened your jaw muscles over the years. Sometimes there is cheese, hard and salty, that must be softened in your mouth before swallowing. Wine, when available, is heavily watered, more for safe hydration than intoxication. Your clothing beneath the armor is practical above all else. A linen chiton, probably unchanged for weeks, carries the accumulated sense of sweat, smoke, and the indefinable smell of men living too close together for too long. Your cloak, essential for the cold nights of the Asian highlands, is wool that has been waterproofed with animal fat, giving it a distinctive odor that you no longer notice, but that marks you as a soldier to anyone who comes near. The conversations around the evening fire reveal the thoughts of men far from home. Lysander speaks of his wife's letters, read so many times that the papyrus has begun to crack along the folds. He describes her garden, the olive trees they planted together, the son who has grown 2 fingers taller since he left. His voice carries the particular loneliness of the professional soldier, the man who has traded domestic happiness for the brotherhood of arms. Others speak of different concerns. Philotas counts his accumulated pay, calculating how many campaigns he must survive to purchase the farm he dreams of. His fingers work with practiced efficiency, sorting the small silver coins that represent not just wealth, but the possibility of a future beyond warfare. The coins are worn smooth from handling, their edges soft, their inscriptions barely visible after passing through countless hands. The rhythm of campaign life, the daily routine of campaign life, has its own harsh poetry. The trumpet sounds before dawn, its bronze voice cutting through the camp's sleep like a blade through silk. You rise immediately, conditioned by years of training to respond without thought. The cold air shocks your system into alertness, while around you, 35,000 men perform the same ritual of preparation. The process of breaking camp is a symphony of organized chaos. Tents collapse with the whisper of leather and rope. Cooking fires are stamped out, their smoke rising like incense to gods who seem very distant from these Asian mountains. Pack animals are loaded with supplies that mean the difference between survival and death grain, oil lying, the 1,000 small necessities that keep an army functioning. Your place in the marching order is precisely defined. The phalanx moves in the center of the column, protected by skirmishers in front and cavalry on the flanks. The rhythm of the march becomes hypnotic. Left foot, right foot, the steady clink of armor, the soft thud of thousands of sandaled feet against the earth. This is not the quick step of parade ground drill, but the measured pace of men who understand that endurance matters more than speed. The landscape changes around you as the army moves, but your awareness is necessarily limited. You see the bronze-clad back of the man in front of you, the dust kicked up by his feet, the familiar pattern of his equipment. Occasionally, a gap in the ranks allows a glimpse of the broader world snow-capped peaks, green valleys, the ruins of cities that have learned the price of resistance. Water breaks are precious intervals in the day's march. The leather water. Skin feels light in your hands. its contents warm and slightly stale, but infinitely valuable. You measure each mouthful, knowing that the next stream may be hours away. The taste of warm, leather-flavored water becomes something to savor, a small pleasure that punctuates the monotony of putting one foot in front of the other. The crucible of battle, when battle comes, the transformation is immediate and total. The long hours of drill, the endless repetition of movements until they become instinctive, all lead to this moment when survival depends on the perfect execution of techniques practiced 10,000 times. The trumpet's call to battle stations produces a response that bypasses conscious thought, muscle memory taking over as your body assumes the stance that has been beaten into it through countless hours of training. The enemy appears as a dark line in the distance, growing larger as the armies close. Your world narrows to the immediate necessities of survival. The weight of your shield becomes irrelevant, adrenaline providing strength that seemed impossible moments before. The spear in your right hand feels alive, its point seeking the gaps. In enemy armor with an intelligence that seems independent of your conscious will. The moment of contact, a crash of bronze on bronze. The splintering of spear shafts, the grunts and screams of men fighting for their lives, creates a chaos that no amount of training can fully prepare you for. Yet somehow, the formation holds. The man to your left maintains his position, his shield overlapping yours in the pattern that has made the phalanx the most feared formation in the ancient world. The man to your right pushes forward with the steady pressure that turns individual fighters into a single, deadly organism. The enemy faces are close enough now to see clearly Persian nobility in their bright silk and gold, Indian warriors. With their long hair and painted shields, Scythian horse archers whose ponies dance nervously at the edge of the melee. These are men like yourself, driven by the same fundamental need to survive, to return home to families and farms, and the familiar rhythms of civilian life. But in this moment, they are simply obstacles to be overcome. Your spear finds its mark, the bronze point sliding between the bronze plates of Persian armor, with a sensation that travels up the shaft to your hands. The enemy warrior's eyes widen in surprise, then cloud with the particular darkness that comes with death. His body slides off your spear point, and you step forward into the space he occupied, maintaining the formation that keeps you and your companions alive. The price of victory brings its own complexities. The immediate aftermath of battle is a time of strange contrasts, the wild joy of survival, mixed with the exhaustion that comes after extreme exertion. Your body, sustained by battle fury, suddenly feels every cut, every bruise, every strain that adrenaline had masked. The bronze of your armor, which felt weightless during the fighting, now presses against your shoulders like a burden specifically designed to test human endurance. The battlefield itself tells the story of the day's work. Bodies lie in the twisted positions that death imposes, their armor bright in the afternoon sun. Persian gold gleams against the dark earth, while broken spears and shattered shields create a debris field that marks the tide of battle. The smell of blood mingles with the dust kicked up by thousands of feet, creating an atmosphere that seems to coat the inside of your mouth and nose. Your share of the spoils is modest but significant. Persian dagger, its blade decorated with silver inlay, its hilt wrapped in leather that still carries the scent of its previous owner. A handful of coins, their weight substantial in your palm. Their foreign inscriptions a reminder of how far you have traveled from the familiar world of Macedonia. Perhaps a piece of jewelry, a bronze armlet, or a silver ring that will serve as proof of your presence at this moment in history. The real treasure is simpler. You are alive. The man who stood beside you this morning, who shared his wine with you last night, who spoke of his father's farm and his hopes for marriage, he will not see another dawn. The arbitrary nature of battlefield death becomes a constant companion, a reminder that survival depends as much on chance as on skill, The world of Persian nobility. Now shift your perspective across the cultural divide that Alexander's conquests have created. Imagine yourself as a member of the Persian noble class, a satrap's son whose world has been turned upside down by the arrival of these bronze-clad barbarians from the west. Your morning begins not in a military tent, but in a pavilion of silk and gold, where the very air seems perfumed with the luxury that has been your birthright. Your clothing tells a different story of power and privilege. The silk of your robe flows like liquid against your skin, its surface decorated with patterns that speak of imperial workshops and master craftsmen. The dyes deep purple from murex shells, brilliant red from cochineal, blue from lapis lazuli represent wealth that could feed a village for a year. Your turban, wound with gold thread, supports a jeweled pin that catches the morning light and throws it back in scattered rainbows. The breakfast that awaits you is a feast that would amaze the common soldiers whose lives we have just examined. Dates stuffed with almonds, their sweetness enhanced by a dusting of cinnamon from the distant spice islands. Bread so white and fine that it seems to dissolve on your tongue, made from wheat flour that has been sifted through the finest silk. Honey cakes flavored with rose water, their delicate taste speaking of gardens where every bloom is cultivated for its contribution to the complete sensory experience. Your servants move with the practiced efficiency of those who understand that their lives depend on anticipating your needs. The water for your morning ablutions is heated to precisely the right temperature, scented with jasmine oil that has been imported from the gardens of Babylon. The basin is silver, its surface polished to mirror brightness, its weight substantial, enough to demonstrate the resources at your disposal. The burden of refinement, yet this luxury comes with its own constraints. Every gesture, every word, every choice of clothing carries symbolic weight in the complex dance of Persian court life. The color of your robe signals your political affiliations. The manner in which you arrange your turban indicates your relationship to the royal family. Even the way you hold your wine cup communicates messages about your status and intentions. The Persian nobility exists within a web of obligations and expectations that would be incomprehensible to the Macedonian soldiers who have conquered their empire. Your day is structured around rituals that have been refined over centuries. The morning audience with your father, the satrap, where you demonstrate your fitness to inherit his position. The afternoon session with your tutors, where you study the classical texts that define Persian culture. The evening banquet, where every seating arrangement, every toast, every conversation carries political implications. Your education has been comprehensive, but entirely different from the Greek model that shaped Alexander, where Greek education emphasized the development of individual excellence. Persian education focuses on the maintenance of social harmony. You have learned to read the subtle signs of court intrigue, to understand the complex relationships between different noble families, to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics, where a single misstep can result in disgrace or death. Horse you ride is a magnificent creature, bred for beauty as much as performance. Its coat gleams with careful grooming, its mane braided with silver threads, its tack decorated with precious stones. This animal represents not just transportation, but a statement of your position in the social hierarchy. The way it moves reflects your own training in the arts of horsemanship that distinguish the Persian noble from the common foot soldier. The shock of conquest, the arrival of Alexander's army, has shattered the assumptions that governed your world. The news comes first as rumors and possible stories of cities fallen, armies defeated, the great king himself fled from the battlefield. These reports seem so contrary to the natural order that they must be false, the product of confused messengers, or enemy propaganda designed to weaken Persian morale. But the reality becomes undeniable as the refugees begin to arrive. Persian nobles, their silk robes torn and stained with dust, their jeweled weapons abandoned in flight, their horses lathered with sweat and exhaustion. They speak of a new kind of warfare, of bronze-clad barbarians who fight with a discipline that matches their ferocity, of a young king who seems to possess the favor of the gods themselves. The psychological impact of defeat goes deeper than mere military loss. The Persian Empire has been built on the assumption of its own inevitability, its divine mandate to rule the civilized world. The Zoroastrian religion that provides the empire's spiritual foundation teaches that the forces of light will ultimately triumph over the forces of darkness. To be defeated by barbarians from the periphery of the known world represents not just political failure, but cosmic catastrophe. Your father, the satrap, must make impossible choices. Resistance means certain death, but submission requires the abandonment of everything that has given meaning to Persian noble life. The careful hierarchies that have defined social relationships for centuries are swept away by the simple fact of military defeat. The cultural practices that have been refined over generations suddenly seem irrelevant in the face of Macedonian practicality. The art of survival adaptation becomes the key to survival in this new world. Some Persian nobles choose the path of complete submission, adopting Greek customs and serving in Alexander's administration. They learn to speak Greek, to appreciate Greek poetry, to participate in Greek symposiums, where wine flows freely and conversation ranges across topics that would have been considered inappropriate in the formal atmosphere of the Persian court. Others attempt to maintain their traditional ways while accommodating the new reality. They continue to wear silk robes, but add Greek cloaks. They preserve their religious practices, but learn to honor Greek gods alongside Persian ones. They maintain their households according to Persian custom, but ensure that their children receive Greek education. The most successful adaptation involves a more fundamental transformation. A few Persian nobles recognize that Alexander's conquest represents not just a change in political control, but the emergence of a new kind of civilization. They throw themselves into the project of cultural synthesis, using their knowledge of Asian customs to help the Macedonians govern their new territories while learning Greek methods of administration and warfare. This process of cultural adaptation is neither easy nor painless. It requires the abandonment of certainties that have defined identity for generations. A Persian noble who learns to fight in the phalanx must suppress instincts that have been developed through years of cavalry training. The administrator who adopts Greek record-keeping methods must learn to think in ways that contradict the symbolic logic of Persian bureaucracy. The persistence of memory, yet even in defeat and adaptation, elements of Persian culture persist. The architectural techniques that created the great palaces of Persepolis influenced the design of Alexander's new cities. The administrative methods that governed the vast Persian Empire provide models for Macedonian efforts to rule even larger territories. The artistic traditions that produced the magnificent reliefs of the royal tombs continue to influence sculptors and painters working for Greek patrons. In the private moments of daily life, Persian nobles maintain connections to their ancestral culture. They continue to perform the morning prayers that connect them to Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom. They preserve the stories and songs that carry the collective memory of their people. They teach their children the courtly manners that define Persian nobility, even as those children learn to speak Greek and participate in Greek cultural activities. The Persian gardens provide a particularly poignant example of cultural persistence. These carefully designed spaces, with their geometric patterns and flowing water, represent a vision of paradise that transcends political boundaries. Even under Greek rule, Persian nobles continue to create and maintain these gardens, their beauty serving as a reminder of the refinement that characterized their civilization at its height. The preservation of Persian culinary traditions offers another form of cultural resistance. The complex spice combinations that define Persian cooking, the techniques for preparing rice and meat that have been passed down through generations, the sweets and drinks that mark religious festivals, These continued to be practiced in noble households, creating islands of familiar taste in a world transformed by conquest.